Welcome back to my YouTube channel WC Coins World, where today we dive deep into the fascinating story of the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar, a coin that not only carries the legacy of President John F. Kennedy but also reflects an important chapter in American numismatic history. From its unique minting details to the changes in design and production, this coin holds secrets that every collector and history enthusiast should know. So get ready as we explore every detail of this remarkable piece, from its origins to its place in modern collections. The 1973 Kennedy half-dollar holds an important position in the history of United States coinage, being a continuation of the coin first issued in 1964 to honor President John F. Kennedy after his assassination in 1963. It was part of a series that symbolized both national mourning and a celebration of leadership. The coin became an instant collector favorite, and by 1973, it had already undergone a number of changes in metal composition and minting processes as part of the post-silver era of U.S. coins. The Kennedy half-dollar series began with a composition of 90% silver in its inaugural year, but by 1971, the United States Mint had fully transitioned the coin to a copper-nickel clad composition due to rising silver prices. This meant that the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar was entirely clad with an inner core of pure copper and an outer layer of copper-nickel, giving it a silver-like appearance without the intrinsic metal value of earlier issues. This change affected circulation patterns and collector interest alike. By 1973, the half-dollar was still produced for circulation, although it was already facing reduced usage in everyday transactions. The primary reasons for its decline were the high face value relative to most daily purchases and the habit of collectors and the public to save Kennedy half-dollars rather than spend them. This meant that the coins were more likely to be seen in rolls or collector albums than in regular commerce. The obverse of the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar retained the classic design by chief engraver Gilroy Roberts, depicting a left-facing portrait of President Kennedy. The design was carefully modeled from a portrait originally prepared for a presidential medal and was intended to convey strength, dignity, and optimism. The fine details of the hair and facial features were a hallmark of Roberts' engraving skill, and they remained consistent throughout the early years of the series. On the reverse of the coin, the design by Frank Gasparro featured the presidential seal, an adaptation of the official coat of arms of the President of the United States. It showed a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings, clutching an olive branch in its right talon and a bundle of arrows in its left, symbolizing peace and military readiness. Above the eagle, a ring of stars encircled the design, representing the 50 states, while the legend, United States of America, and half-dollar framed the reverse. The mint marks on the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar play an important role in identifying its origin. Three primary mints were involved in production that year: the Philadelphia Mint, which produced coins without a mint mark; the Denver Mint, which used the D mark; and the San Francisco Mint, which struck proof coins with the S mint mark. Each facility produced coins under different quality and production standards, especially for proof issues from San Francisco. In 1973, Philadelphia produced the largest number of Kennedy half-dollars. These coins were intended for general circulation and bore no mint mark. This lack of a mint mark has often caused confusion for new collectors, who sometimes assume a missing mark means a rare error. In truth, the Philadelphia Mint did not place mint marks on half-dollars until later in the series' history. The Denver Mint also struck a substantial mintage of 1973 Kennedy half-dollars, and these can be identified by the small letter D located just above the date on the obverse. Coins from Denver are generally well struck with sharp details, although minor variations in strike quality do occur depending on die wear and planchet preparation. The San Francisco Mint focused primarily on proof coin production in 1973, and these proof Kennedy half-dollars bear the S mint mark located in the same position as the D on Denver coins. Proof coins from this year were struck using specially prepared dies and polished planchets, resulting in mirror-like surfaces and sharp frosted details on the raised design elements. Proof coins were sold directly to collectors in proof sets rather than released into circulation. One important historical note about the 1973 Kennedy half dollar is that none were struck in 40% silver for circulation, unlike the 1965 to 1970 issues, which still contained silver. The 1973 coins were exclusively copper-nickel clad. The exception was limited to special collector strikes in earlier years, but by 1973 even proof and uncirculated sets contained only clad composition coins, making them more accessible but less intrinsically valuable in metal terms. The production of the 1973 Kennedy half dollar was part of a broader numismatic landscape in the United States, where coinage designs were stable and consistent. The early 70s were a time of economic change, with inflation beginning to impact purchasing power and the role of the half dollar in commerce diminishing. Despite this, the Kennedy half dollar retained symbolic importance and remained popular among the public as a keepsake. Collectors of the 1973 Kennedy half dollar often pay attention to strike quality, luster, and any minor die variations such as doubling or die cracks. Although no major varieties are officially recognized for the year, minor anomalies do exist and can be of interest to specialists who focus on the series. These details make coin hunting for this date still enjoyable for those looking through old rolls or collections. Historically, the 1973 Kennedy half dollar also reflects the cultural legacy of the 1960s, the enduring popularity of President Kennedy, and the symbolism of unity and progress that his image conveyed. The decision to maintain the design without change for decades after its introduction speaks to the lasting public sentiment and the coin's role as a numismatic tribute. The choice of the Kennedy portrait by Gilroy Roberts was not only a reflection of artistic skill, but also a deliberate attempt to capture the spirit of a young and dynamic leader whose presidency was cut short. The pose facing left was considered dignified and noble, and the fine detailing in the hair became one of the most distinctive features of the coin. Collectors often examined this detail closely to assess strike sharpness on any given example. By 1973, the minting process for the Kennedy half dollar had become highly mechanized, with planchets being punched from large sheets of clad metal and then fed through upsetting mills to raise the rims. Before striking, the coins were struck under high pressure to bring out the fine details of the design. However, slight differences in die pressure alignment and wear could still produce subtle variations in the finished coins. One area of interest for specialists in the 1973 Kennedy half dollar is the presence of minor hub doubling or die deterioration. Doubling, which can cause certain letters or parts of the design to appear slightly doubled. While these are not considered major varieties by mainstream numismatics, they can add intrigue to a collection and can be spotted with careful magnification. The absence of silver in the 1973 issue made the coin more practical for the mint in terms of cost, but it also removed much of the intrinsic value that earlier silver coins possessed. This meant that any premium for 1973 half dollars would be based entirely on condition, rarity, or collector demand rather than metal content. This was a shift that many older collectors had to adjust to during the early 70s. The role of mint marks in numismatic study is central for the 1973 Kennedy half dollar, since the location above the date allows for quick identification of a coin's origin. The small D or S letters were applied to the master dies at the respective mint facilities before production began, meaning the mint mark was an integral part of the die itself rather than added later. This process ensured consistency in size and placement. The Philadelphia Mint was historically the first U.S. mint, and its coins in 1973 followed the long-standing tradition of having no mint mark for half dollars. This practice would eventually change, but in this year, a coin with no letter above the date can be assumed to have been struck in Philadelphia. In general, these coins are abundant and form the bulk of the surviving population. Coins from Denver in 1973 with the D mint mark tend to be similar in overall appearance to Philadelphia issues, but sometimes have slightly different toning or luster characteristics due to variations in the alloy, batches, and storage conditions before release. Some collectors can even learn to identify a mint of origin by eye, although this requires significant experience. San Francisco proof issues from 1973 are noteworthy for their precision strike and visual appeal. The dies used for proof coins were carefully polished before each production run, and the coins were struck at least twice to ensure sharp details. Each coin was then individually handled and inspected before being sealed in protective holders and packaged into proof sets, which were mailed to collectors across the country. Another interesting fact about the 1973 Kennedy half dollar is that despite the high mintage, many people of the time did not see the coin in their change. The public perception of the half dollar as a keepsake meant that it was pulled from circulation almost immediately after release, which has contributed to its availability in high grades even today. The numismatic market for the 1973 Kennedy half dollar is influenced by grading rarity in higher mint state levels and cameo contrast for proofs. Common circulated coins hold little premium, but gem, uncirculated, or deep cameo proofs can command respectable prices, especially when certified by a reputable grading service. The appeal of these coins often lies in their perfection and eye appeal rather than scarcity. For those building a complete Kennedy half dollar, date and mint mark set the 1973 issues present little challenge in terms of affordability, but they still offer historical and aesthetic value. The coins fit neatly into the broader narrative of U.S. coinage during the CLAD era, when the government balanced production costs with the public's attachment to traditional designs. Educationally, the 1973 Kennedy half dollar serves as a good example for teaching new collectors about the impact of metal composition changes on a coin's usage and collectability. It also illustrates how public sentiment can shape the fate of a denomination even when official policy continues to produce it in large numbers. The durability of the copper-nickel clad composition used in 1973 meant that these coins resisted wear better than earlier silver issues in circulation. Tests, they showed slower loss of detail over time, making them practical for long-term use, although in reality the half dollar's low circulation meant few were ever truly worn down in the way smaller denominations were. In numismatic literature, the 1973 Kennedy half dollar is often discussed as part of the early CLAD era, which began in 1971 and marked a permanent departure from silver for circulating halves. The year 1973 sits firmly in this period and helps define the baseline characteristics of CLAD half dollar production. Some collectors seek out coins with attractive natural toning from the 1973 mintage, especially those stored in original mint packaging over decades. This toning can range from light golden hues to deep blues and purples caused by reactions between the coin's metal and the storage environment. Toned examples can be more visually appealing and sometimes command a premium. In terms of international collecting, the 1973 Kennedy half dollar is also sought by collectors outside the United States, as it represents one of the most recognized American coin designs. The popularity of President Kennedy abroad contributes to its appeal, and proof sets containing the coin are often found in collections worldwide. The story of the 1973 Kennedy half dollar also intersects with the history of coin collecting in the 1970s, when interest in the hobby surged due to promotional programs by the U.S. Mint and coin dealers. Many families began assembling date and mint mark sets of U.S. coins during this period, leading to increased preservation of coins like the 1973 halves. No significant mint errors are widely known for the 1973 Kennedy half dollar, but like all coins struck in high volumes, occasional off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or die breaks can be found. These error coins can add variety to a collection and sometimes fetch higher prices depending on their severity and visual impact. The legacy of the 1973 Kennedy half dollar lies in its role as a bridge between the early commemorative purpose of the series and its later status as a collector-focused denomination. The design remained unchanged, which gave continuity to the series while production continued to satisfy both circulation needs and collector demand. Today, the 1973 Kennedy half dollar remains an accessible and historically significant coin for collectors. Its abundance makes it an excellent starting point for those new to numismatics, while its background offers rich opportunities for deeper study into U.S. Mint history, mint mark usage, and the cultural significance of coinage is a reflection of national identity, making it not only a piece of metal, but a small, enduring monument to an era and a leader whose memory continues to inspire. Thank you for watching WC Coins World. Today, we explored the full history and details of the 1973 Kennedy half dollar, and I hope you enjoyed learning about this fascinating piece of numismatic history. Stay tuned for more coin stories from around the world, and remember, every coin has a story waiting to be discovered.